Your hosts are here, Sammie and Michelle. By the end of this podcast, you'll know them well. Adulting, navigating the journey of life. Careers to relationships, pain and strife. Put down the rule book, rethink the status quo. If there's another direction you wanna go, find purpose, passion and mastery in all that you do with Status Post Adulting.
Hey, Status Post Adulting fam! This is Sammie
and Michelle.
And you're listening to the 71st episode of Status Post Adulting, where we're going to be talking about growth mindset and fixed mindset. But first, let me check in with my co-host, Michelle. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing really well, Sammie. How are you?
I'm doing super good, especially since this week we actually got to meet Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. here in our small town.
That's right, people.
Yes. As you may recall, in a previous episode, we read the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz Sr., and his son has actually also written books, and he came to speak at the local college here, and he even talked a lot about his dad's books and overall their family's teachings in the Toltec tradition. It was so good. He is so insightful, and I really felt very good spiritual vibes around him.
It's so true, Sammie. And it really strikes us as so wild because we only read the 4 Agreements because a couple people had recommended it to us. We love the 4 Agreements. It's actually been one of our most popular episodes, one of our most popular recent episodes. And I know we talk a lot about how we're in a small town. And if you don't know where we are, we're not over exaggerating how tiny this town is. It's very, very small. And so the fact that so soon after we had read the 4 Agreements, we had this opportunity to go and hear him speak, it felt a little bit like fate to us. Because what are the chances?
It's so true, Michelle. Literally, we read this book because our listeners were like, you guys need to read this book. And then Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. is here in town. So it was great. We actually got to speak with him a little bit and get a book signed by him, a copy of the 4 Agreements. So that was pretty exciting.
It really was. And he was so nice. And it sounds like his dad is just as nice, super cool, eccentric guy. And it's just nice when you read a book and you feel like, especially in a book like the 4 Agreements, where you feel like that person really inspired you and they had such a great message. And then to meet them, or in this case, his son, and see that he's just a good person, makes me so much more excited about the book as well.
Yeah, Michelle. It does seem like they both genuinely just care about like getting these Toltec tradition messages out there in a way that's understandable to the general population. And it was just nice to see that in person and see that like it matched what you experience when you read the book.
Exactly. And speaking of great concepts that you want to get out into the world, Sammie, we have talked a lot about the fixed mindset and growth mindset with each other. We've mentioned it on this podcast occasionally, and we were like, we should do a full topic on the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset because it's so interesting. It's really game-changing if you're somebody who is interested in taking a look at your life and seeing if there are certain things you can adjust. And I have been reading a lot of self-help books recently. Carol Dweck's Mindset, The New Psychology of Success is mentioned all the time, so I knew I wanted to read it. Sammie had already read it a couple years ago, so she reread it for this episode, and we are just really excited to talk about it today.
That's right, Michelle. Michelle and I were talking about it and we're like, wait, have we literally never talked about fixed mindset and growth mindset? Because we talk about this with each other all the time, and it's a concept that once you know about it, it will change the way you approach learning anything.
I totally agree, Sammie. And so what is the fixed mindset? What is the growth mindset? What Carol Dweck had studied and what she had found was that people tend to approach things, especially things that they're learning and trying to get better on, with either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is basically this idea that you think people are innately one way, innately intelligent, athletic, creative, kind, even personality traits. And those are relatively fixed and can't be changed. A growth mindset is somebody who, yes, they understand that we all might come into this world with different opportunities, different strengths, different talents, but that anything can be worked on and improved. And the implications of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset are actually pretty huge. It turns out that people who have a fixed mindset, they might find success in life, but they're pretty closed-minded if they hit a barrier. They feel like a personal failure if they don't get the award, the highest grade, they're not the best athlete, whatever it might be. And someone with a growth mindset is actually more excited about a challenge. They might be working on it, they might not be the best, they may be the best, but they always see themselves as enjoying the journey and working to improve themselves and believing that they have the ability to improve themselves.
That's correct, Michelle. And when I heard about fixed mindset and growth mindset, I remember thinking about our 5th grade awards ceremony. In 5th grade, there was like a little graduation that we had before going into the next class. And I think some of the awards were like best student in this subject, best student in that subject, like math, geography, whatever. And this one kid was winning all the awards. And I remember like a few girls in our class started crying. And I thought this was really strange. And they're not like the second smartest, you know? It's not like they're silver medal and they just near missed it. It's like these people were nowhere near winning the math or geography award that year. I just thought it was really odd that they were crying because I'm like, it's just like a little 5th grade award ceremony thing. And then now that I read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, I really understand that these people probably had a fixed mindset. They probably felt that when David was winning all these awards for math and geography and all the other subjects, that meant that they were like permanently scarred and could never be the smartest in those subjects. And that really shows how harmful a fixed mindset could be. Versus, one, I was like, yeah, he's super smart in those, makes sense. But then 2, in my head, whether it's true or not, I did feel like, hey, if I wanted to be really good at that, one day I could be good at that. So I realized that they saw that as a permanent and fixed trait of themselves. And it's that fixed mindset that made that loss or that not winning the award so painful for them.
It's so true, Sammie. It's interesting when we look back on our childhood, especially between the two of us, I really think a lot about whether or not I had a fixed or growth mindset. And I think the truth is that for a large portion of the time that I was in school, definitely up until high school, but probably until I graduated, I may or may not have had a fixed mindset, but I definitely wasn't putting it up to the task. Like, I had the advantage growing up. I was the second child in our family, so our parents troubleshooted a lot with Sammie, and she was the guinea pig, and I learned a lot from that, both in seeing it and with what my mom learned. I feel like I went to preschool like 20 times. Like, by the time I went to kindergarten, I was way smarter than the other kids, and part of the reason was just because I think my parents put me into school whenever they put you into school. So I was reading and such, and that's a huge advantage. That's something that probably put me in a trajectory for a very long time, especially when you're in public school in Michigan. Like, I was doing well and I was ahead of the other kids for a really long time. And I was competitive, and I think that was good for me because that really drove me to work hard. And I knew that if I studied and worked hard, that I could do really well, which might imply a growth mindset. But at the same time, I was, I think, smarter than my environment for a really long time. So I worked hard, I would do better. I didn't really come against a lot of challenges until I was a lot older. And what I realized after college, though, when I learned about fixed and growth mindset, was that in a lot of ways, after high school, I think I did have a bit of a fixed mindset. Or at least I didn't have this idea that if I did poorly, if I got a B, literally a B, a lot of times I would just assume that that topic wasn't for me. And I didn't really apply myself the same way when I was in college. And looking back, I wish I would have just realized that it didn't really matter and that I could have just taken whatever subjects I wanted to and just learned that. I think that was something I learned a little bit as I grew, but there were a lot of majors that I decided not to pursue because in my first intro class, I got a B.
Yeah, Michelle. And while Michelle was the very mature child for her group, I was definitely the runt of the litter. I started school super early. I think I was like 4 years old. And I was not like a 4-year-old genius. Like I was a normal 4-year-old kid. And I had to work so hard just to like stay at normal level for a long time. And I think for me, because of that, hard work was just inherent to school. Like if I wanted to do well in school, I knew I had to work hard. And, you know, I think when I look back on it, I'm impressed that I worked as hard as I did for as long as I did. Because for a long time, I did not see any results. Like I was just, you know, getting by pretty much. I wasn't like super smart or anything like that. I was just like, you know, just okay. But considering all the work that I was putting in, it's just like crazy to think that I was just meh, you know, I was okay. But I think it also led me to have a growth mindset for sure. I remember my first grade teacher had told my mom that, you know, even though the other kids may be smarter than me, they're not going to end up better off than me in the long term because I was a harder worker than them. And I don't know if I believed her or not, but today I can definitely see that that is true. Like I just have a different attitude towards skills that I just know that like in order to be good at something, you just have to work at it. And I think really some of these, like, especially for things like, I know for writing, I didn't start becoming good at that in high school. And then I started to become like better than my peers. And I could just see that like these little engine that could motions from the past had slowly caught up with me and slowly gave me like this acceleration where now I was like actually doing better than people around me. And math, which had been a subject that I was not good at all, like it felt like a flip had switched once I had gone to high school. And then like all of a sudden towards the end of high school, I was becoming good at math. I was good at physics, like all these things that I never thought were things that I would be good at. I started to do really well in, and I started to appreciate that that's because I put that time in, and that's because I took the time to learn it in like a really detailed way. And I just understood that like if you take the time to learn things very thoroughly, you can over time become really good at things.
Yeah, Sammie, I think that's the biggest difference. I remember too, looking back, like seeing how much things changed, both for you when you were in high school and in undergrad and college. Like a lot of times you had some realization, made the decision, and were able to fully turn around your trajectory. Versus for me, I still remember the first B I got in AP chemistry, and I had worked so hard, and I got an 89.4. I still remember it to this day. And it was the hardest I had worked to get an A, I think, up until that point. Or I guess maybe to fall short of an A is probably the truth. And I remember being devastated. I was so sad. And the reason that's a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset is I actually improved a lot. Everybody was doing bad in that class. And I still thought I didn't do well because I got an 89.4. But had I gotten a 90.0, I would have thought I killed it. So a big thing there is that I was very outcome driven instead of really appreciating that I had like learned a skill and had gotten to be pretty good at it.
Yeah, Michelle. And it's funny because I think about me in college. I remember there was a semester where I just had a ton going on. Like I had zero time and I got like a D or something in microbiology. And I like did not even question that I was bad at microbiology. I'm like, I'm good at it. I just didn't have time. And next semester, I'm going to retake it and I'm going to have a lot of time and I'm going to do well. And it's true. And so I think I just never saw failure as a sign that there's something wrong with me.
It's so interesting too, Sammie, because a lot of the fixed and growth mindset, according to the studies that Carol Dweck does and referenced in mindset, is related to your childhood and the messages that you received from your parents and your teachers. And I can see that in so many different ways growing up and how that could have affected us. At the same time, I will say for us, we were growing up in a household where both of our parents were working, both of our parents were working opposite shifts, and we're completely new to the education system in this country. And so in some ways, a fixed and growth mindset was probably not the first thing that they were trying to think about. They were, I think, trying to figure out just how this stuff worked. And I think we knew that as well. At the same time, I will say I do remember our mom at least preaching a very positive mindset. Like, she always told me, like, you should never not take a class because you think that you'll do poorly in it. She was like, it's always better to challenge yourself and rise to the occasion than take a class just so that you can get an A. And that is something I did carry on with me throughout school, because I think that no matter how I did, I always felt like I could take a class without having to fear the grade I would get, because I knew that it would be worth it to go and work hard and learn more about that topic. At the same time, I think because I was doing really well for so long, our parents love us a lot. We're very lucky. We're from very supportive environments. And they definitely are the type of people to be like, you are the best. You're killing it. You're doing great. I still love you, which is all great and positive. But there are some negatives to that as well.
Yeah, Michelle. And I think especially with growth mindset versus fixed mindset, Carol Dweck talks about the way people talk to their children. And if you're saying things like, you're really smart, you're really good at this, things like that, which seem positive, can actually perpetuate a fixed mindset, because that kind of tells that person that they have a natural talent or some sort of genetic superiority that is making them good at something. Versus if you say things like you work really hard or you really tried and you had a good outcome, that actually perpetuates a growth mindset, because you're signaling that like hard work and effort actually create the outcome. And I think at home and at school, I think Michelle and I actually got really different messages, where I was constantly getting like the growth mindset message that like, you work really hard and that's going to help you and that's what made you do a good job. Versus Michelle was getting this message that's like, oh, you're really smart and it made it seem like more innate or more natural.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I think my mom's way of motivating me when I was younger, because my teachers would always, I was doing very well for like the school system that we were in, so they definitely did not worry about me. But my mom would always find somebody who was doing better than me. She knew that I was so motivated by competition, and she'd be like, well, Kevin has higher grades than you. When I was in kindergarten, I was like competing with this kid for grades. Very Asian parent mindset, I think. But that was the thing that would like move me forward.
He was also an Asian kid.
We were both Asian and we were both competing for the top spot. That probably did help. And I was always number 2. So for a long period of my life, I think that I was like struggling to be number 1, which was probably a good thing. But it didn't come from my teachers. Like that's not the education system in Michigan. Like that's not what they're focused on, quite frankly.
Yeah. When I reflect back, I think about these things that I would do that I would be terrible at, but I would just continue to do them forever and I wouldn't care. Like I did track and I was definitely most improved in track because there was a lot of room for improvement, you could say. I remember I did synchronized swimming and I was not a good swimmer. I was like literally, I remember dreading going because I'd be like suffocating for like 3 hours because I was so not fit. And I would just make myself do that. And I didn't care about being the worst. And I didn't care that I was like very tired because of that. For me, that's just how things were.
Yeah, Sammie. I will say, strangely, I think where I ended up having the best growth mindset is anytime I had to do something physical. I hate to stretch, but I was in marching band and it was competitive. It was very difficult for me. I was not a physically fit child.
And the trumpet is a heavy instrument.
And I was with almost all guys. And I had also just no concept of marching band. Like, again, I come from an Indian family. No one else in my family had been in the marching band. I literally didn't even know what I was signing up for, honestly. And I was really, really bad, even though at the time I was one of the better trumpet players. And it was really mentally, like, I think that was the first time in my life where I was doing something every single day that I was so bad at. And then I eventually got better. Never the best, but I did get better. And I felt that was the thing in my life that actually I did, that I fully started to realize, hey, if I apply myself, even if I suck at the beginning and I feel like my arms are going to collapse into themselves, I can still work on something and get better. And I think that carried on when I would like dance later in life. We never took professional dance lessons. I was definitely not like the top dancer or the most talented dancer, but it was something that I wanted to do so badly. Weirdly very focused on it when I was in college. And I got better over time. And I think I was really happy with the improvements I made. I was happy when I was allowed to compete with my dance team. I was never the best, but I was happy because I knew I was getting better.
So people can have fixed or growth mindsets when it comes to relationships as well. For example, people might enter a relationship and they may see that things, after the honeymoon phase is over, things are becoming increasingly difficult. And we can have a fixed or growth mindset when it comes to working through problems in the relationship. Some people who have a fixed mindset may feel like it's not worth working through the problems because the relationship is not going to change. It's the same. If it's not working, then it's not going to work. And the more effort you put into it means it's really not meant to be. On the other hand, if two people have a good growth mindset, they can see a relationship that's not working and both make improvements on creating a better relationship. With that said, it does have to be a two-person thing. If one person is willing to change and the other person never changes, then that might not work out.
The ultimate growth mindset in a relationship is an arranged marriage. Because you're just
you're
like, you know what? You two are going to figure it out. But in all seriousness, I think that it is interesting. This was interesting to me because I think it is easy to romanticize a relationship. And they talk about this in Mindset, where you feel like if you have a fixed mindset about a relationship, you do feel like, oh, someone will love me for me and I'll love them for them and we'll have no issues. And if we have problems, that means the relationship is bad. Which a growth mindset is more, we can work through things. Obviously, you have to know where that line is, but I do think that from what I've seen from people in my life, two people who have a growth mindset are able to communicate and work through issues a lot. It's not easy, but they're willing to do it, and it helps so much.
It's true, Michelle. And Carol also talks about even in breakups, people who have a fixed mindset can have a harder time getting over a breakup. For example, she specifically talks about people getting ghosted. She doesn't use that terminology, but she talks about people
2006, people weren't getting ghosted yet.
She talks about people getting ghosted and how people with fixed mindsets versus people with growth mindsets really responded to it differently. For example, people with fixed mindsets would sometimes, they first of all would be very resentful and were more likely to seek revenge in their partner. And then two, they also were more likely to feel like there was something permanently wrong with them that resulted in the relationship not working out. For example, they feel like they're unlovable or some really permanent stain on them that's making them have an issue keeping their partner. Versus people with a growth mindset were willing to get over it, let it go. They would rather forgive that person mentally and continue on with their life so that they can find a new partner. And they were willing to acknowledge things that maybe they didn't do well in the relationship that could have resulted in that other person leaving, but not in a way where they feel like they're permanently flawed.
It's true, Sammie. As someone who's gone through breakups and who has been ghosted, I feel like I at least can see the transition of this for me. Because I think if something happens right away, I don't know if I feel so revengeful. That's an interesting trait for the fixed mindset. But I do think it's very easy sometimes at the beginning of a breakup for me to be like, oh my gosh, it's my fault. What did I do wrong? But that sort of shifts into a better growth mindset, which is, hey, this person has their own stuff going on. I have my own stuff going on. What can I learn from this? What can I do better? Was this just a bad match? And then moving forward. But I do see how if you get really caught up in a fixed mindset, you'll just be running a loop in your head. One, of like this person waking up with a horse head that you had secretly delivered to their bedroom, while also...
What do you mean by horse head?
That's a Godfather reference, I think. I haven't personally dreamt of this, just to clarify.
Does the horse run off and ghost the person? I don't get the connection.
No, it's a dead animal. Haven't you seen this reference in television and stuff?
Well, I don't understand the connection to what you're doing.
Anyway, the point is revenge. Some people might be plotting revenge, but then also they're having trouble because they're taking it so personally, because a fixed mindset is somebody, when something bad happens, when they don't achieve their goal, they think, I'm bad. I'm the reason that this is happening. And you end up both ironically blaming yourself. It's like a low insecurity thing. And then also blaming other people because you don't want to admit that it's you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Interesting that she brings it up because it's something that I've often wondered about is why some people can get over a relationship so quickly and other people can linger. And it has nothing to do with like the quality of their relationship or how long they were in the relationship. Like some people just like can't get over it. And I think this fixed mindset aspect is really interesting.
I totally agree, Sammie. Also, because we talk about finance, I think people can have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset when it comes to finance as well. And we definitely encourage you to have a growth mindset because there are definitely people out there. You see this sometimes in comments or tweets towards people who are talking about personal finance topics. But people have this idea that I don't have the knowledge, I can't do it, I can't learn it, I'm bad with money. All of these are fixed mindsets. Versus a growth mindset might be, I've made mistakes before, feel that for myself, and I can get better about learning about things within personal finance. I can go and do an experiment and learn. I think I'm so happy that I did eventually figure that out in my life. Probably when I was younger, I did think that, oh, I know what I know about personal finance and that's like it. This is as good as I can be.
Yeah, Michelle, it's really interesting because as someone who likes to be frugal, I'm part of a lot of cheap and frugal groups on Reddit. And sometimes in those groups, people can end up being a little bit negative, like, oh, I'll never have a high income, or these people only have a high income because of XYZ. And it's really interesting because there are people in the United States of America who have a fixed mindset about income and things like that, which can be really detrimental.
It's true, Sammie. And it happens at all stages. Like, I've seen people who have the same job as me who can't believe that they can figure out stuff about their money, which, you know, at that point, we're very much so equals. And a lot of times that fixed mindset, it's not their ability to learn that prevents them from doing better. It's actually because they don't even want to learn because they're like, I just can't, I just don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to look at this problem.
Yeah, it's so true, Michelle. I will hear that with my peers. People be like, I'll never make that much money, or I'll never date anybody who makes more than this much money. They just think that that's not possible for them. And it's ludicrous when I hear that because I'm like, wait, like, just ask people. Like, if you ask around, like, other people like us with no more qualifications than us are able to do these things. There's kind of a fixed mindset that, you know, sets that bar low sometimes and keeps us down.
Yeah. And a lot of things can affect your mindset growing up. And a lot of that has to do with how you are in the world and how the world responds to you. Like, I don't think we negate that at all. But at the same time, there's so much power in taking ownership over your life and your education, which is why I am now manifesting that I will be Jeff Bezos' second wife.
She has been manifesting that, people, and I hope he's a nice guy because I don't care who he is, okay? I do have a high standard for my sister.
Thank you. I'm sure he's nice.
And, you know, that's an interesting point that you bring up because I do think that there's almost something with being part of an immigrant family that can help have a growth mindset sometimes because you've literally witnessed, like, within 1 to 2 generations, a huge increase in your family's income and earning potential a lot of times, especially when they've immigrated to the US. And I think that can just, like, inherently put in your mind that you can do anything that you want. I think a lot of times we see immigrants are the people who are creating the most wealth and starting new businesses and doing these more high-risk things because they have the confidence that they can grow. And I see that with immigrant children as well. They're a lot of times very successful because they just have that confidence that they've witnessed growth. Nothing about their position is stuck.
It's so true, Sammie. I mean, I definitely feel that with our family. Our parents came from India. It's not their first language. They don't know that many people. In Michigan, they came to. It snows.
It's cold. They don't know snow. They don't know snow boots.
They're leaving their family behind. These are all real things. And yet they are very motivated to figure it out. They're motivated to try and learn the language, to try and get an education, to try to educate their kids. And there's a lot of challenges in that. But I do think when you see that growing up, when you're second generation like us, you're like, well, crap. Whenever people are like, I can't believe you just moved and you just left to California or Austin or this small town we're living in. I'm like, literally, they speak the same language here. We're in California still. Like, that's nothing. My parents can come to me in 2 to 3 hours. That's literally nothing in comparison. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that you see that passed down in generations when you have seen your parents go through that struggle and have such a positive mindset about it.
So true. And so maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, I got a growth mindset in these categories. I got a fixed mindset in these categories. How do I change my fixed mindset? Can I change it? Yes. I think the first step in changing your mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, one, simply being aware that there's 2 options. Once you know that, you can kind of catch yourself and be like, hey, I have a limited belief about this, and I'm having a fixed mindset.
Exactly, Sammie. Have a growth mindset about your fixed mindset.
Exactly. And then I know for me personally, I think a big one is just instead of being so outcome-based and thinking, am I meeting this goal right now today? Break things down into the babiest of baby steps. You just want to meet small steps every day. I think about when I was learning Spanish. I wasn't like, oh, can I have a fluent conversation today? No, I would have given up on day 1. But I was like, did I do my Spanish homework and conjugate my verbs today? And it's like literally half an hour by half an hour, hour by hour, these little increments of time that you dedicate towards learning that skill, that's ultimately what will make the skill in the long term. It's not fixating on the goal.
Exactly, Sammie. It's so much about being 1% better every day, the compound growth in everything you do, even when you can't see it. And the good thing is, too, is that if you can improve your mindset about one thing, let's say you exercise more and you start to become more fit, then all of a sudden that can help you see and believe that other things can change too. So that does carry throughout your life. I think by fixing your mindset on one thing, you'll see it change on other things as well. I would add to that, learn to enjoy the challenge. When I was younger, when I was a little bit more competitive, I loved being able to work at something, do better, and then see what the end result was. And if I didn't succeed, I did see it more as like a challenge to do better. It's about enjoying the journey, enjoying the challenge in different things, because anything you want to do to improve yourself, it will be difficult, it will be hard, it will be boring. But when you start to think, oh, actually, like I'm getting better and like this is my mind sharpening and getting better every single day, then that will go so far in trying to change your mindset.
And lastly, Michelle, I think the big thing is just to take action. I think with fixed mindset, focusing on the outcome, that is literally thinking, and thinking doesn't really do much, but like action does a lot. So it is all about just taking action. Like instead of plotting, just literally take action, and that is going to be so much more valuable to your journey.
It's so true, Sammie. So let us know what your thoughts are in the fixed mindset, growth mindset. Are there certain things that you feel like you have more of a fixed mindset on versus a growth mindset, or vice versa? Let us know. We'd love to hear it. Share status post adulting with your friends. This is a topic that we think is so core to so much about status post adulting. So if you think someone will enjoy it, definitely shoot them this episode.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.